Alright, today we're going to talk about how to introduce new players. Now, when you're looking at a new player, it can be something as simple as a veteran gamer that is new to your group, or it could be something as delicate as somebody who is new to tabletop RPGs altogether, and you're their first experience. Now, when you're doing so, there's a few things you need to take into account. First of all, if they're varying degrees of experience, you're either A, introducing them to your group and how your group operates. You're either introducing them to the system because it's something they're new to, whatever the game is, or if they're brand new altogether, you may need to actually break it down step by step on what it is going on. And you may have somebody who doesn't even want to play. You may have somebody who is genuinely curious, and much of the initial interaction of a brand new tabletop gamer is going to be the same as somebody who just has a passing curiosity for it. Basically, when you have that brand new person or the inquiring person, it's important to make references they understand and don't fixate too much on the genre. I've seen a lot of my gamer friends, like if you're playing Dungeons & Dragons, make a reference to Lord of the Rings or the Dark Crystal, which is fine. Lord of the Rings is known of, but it's not necessarily widely known about. So I have a lot of friends who have heard Lord of the Rings. They know I'm Lord of the Rings fans. If I start talking Lord of the Rings, even to what has been seen in the movies, I see a rapid decrease in knowledge from knowing of it to knowing about it. And so making references like Lord of the Rings with movies, or like Final Fantasy or Skyrim with video games, it's a very narrow fan base as opposed to the scope of humanity. So you need to make references that, while are not similar in genre, they can relate to. Such as, if you have a Marvel fan, referencing the Avengers and then just tacking it on with, but it's in a fantasy setting, that's a very relatable statement there. Or if they're into westerns and you say, hey, the Magnificent Seven movie that just came out, that's kind of that, except for fantasy, and it becomes something they can relate. I promise you, the average human being can bridge the gap with that statement. Now, at that point, it's a simple matter of selling the role-playing concept and selling the concept of dealing with mechanics to them. And how I have always explained role-playing to somebody who's never role-played before is thinking of it as a movie or television show where they are among the main cast and I am the director that also happens to act as supporting cast. And even though that's not a in-depth description, it's a sufficient one when you're trying to make a selling point to a new player or a prospective new player or even an inquiring individual. Next, you have to sell the rules, because they understand it's a game and there's a lot of rules, and they may have had a bad impression where, like, a friend tried to get them involved. They sat at the table, saw all the rules, and bad experience, insert here, and they ran away screaming. So they need to understand, and a good way to put it is that their abilities as characters and the other effects in game are governed by the rules, but the game isn't. The rules are not the focus. The rules are to supplement and stabilize the game. They're not meant to take over it. And if that's the understanding they go into it, that they'll learn the rules along the way and the main part of it is role playing, you've overcome the biggest hurdle there. And at that point, you need to distinguish whether or not you're dealing with somebody who's simply curious or is a genuine prospective player, and you need to respect that difference once it is established. Because if they don't want to play and they're just wondering what it's all about, leave it at that. Prying at it is only going to irritate them. But even if they do want to play, another thing that I'd like to note is that regularly occurring events are genuinely difficult to accommodate into your schedule, especially if you have a schedule that is already pre-established. If you work a full-time job, then it is very easy to have a difficult time working into a regular recurring event. Even if your event is on one of their days off, that's one of their days off that now they are taking away from other forms of socialization, or even other things like meetings, things like that, doctor's appointments. Now, they could of course do those things. You're not going to be a total jerk and make them abandon those, but it's a bit of commitment there that you need to understand that they have to go through. I have two friends actually, who are trying to clear up their schedules to game with my group. One of them is a single mom, full-time college student, full-time job. I'm being very patient with her. The other has a full-time job with a schedule that in no way accommodates my gaming schedule, and she's trying to get that changed. So as you can tell, two examples of, yeah, it's not necessarily that easy for them to show up. And when they finally do get around to showing up, it's good to talk to them beforehand so that they know what they're expecting from the night. And if you've got a veteran player that's just getting used to your group, it's good to tell them who the players are, what they're like, what you guys typically do, what your style of roleplay is, and what your DMing style is. Because these are things that a veteran player is going to understand. Even if they're new to the system, they're going to understand the concept of how you roleplay and how the group dynamics work. It's also good to know with all three of those types of people, because if there's somebody around that they won't be comfortable with, or that they're not supposed to be around, or any number of situations can arise, that's important for them to know. So basically, both in and out of game, they should know what they're expecting. The new player, of course, there's certain dynamics that they're just going to have to see for themselves first time around, but explain it as best you can. That way they're not walking in completely blind, because the more they have to take blindsided, the more standoffish it's going to be and the less appealing the situation is going to be to them. Once they show up, and it becomes less appropriate when you have a veteran gamer or simply somebody who's not familiar with the system. But even then, if you want to just have them sit and watch for the first session to however long it takes for them to be comfortable, and rather than sit right down and play, provide that option. It presents a buffering room. It presents a means of them not feeling as pressured. And especially when you've got the brand new aspiring role player, the idea that they can just sit back and check it out a time or two so that they understand what they're getting into is much less intimidating. To a veteran gamer, changing games or changing groups may not be a big deal. It may. But to a brand new role player, the situation you presented to them is a immense change of environment for them. The average human being does not adapt well to change. Let them work at their pace. So that same works with introducing them to the rules. Take into account what they're familiar with and what they're able to handle and what they're able to process as a player. Try to create a simple character and make it more appealing to them via flavor text, rather than, like, I have, as an avid player of 3.5 edition Dungeons & Dragons, I can create any character you can think of. Will it be mechanically understandable to you as a brand new player? Probably not. But I can probably make a much simpler version and forego a lot of power and a lot of efficiency that I would normally build, so that you can understand it a lot easier. And that's something you should take into account with a brand new player, especially even if it's just somebody who's new to the system. If they don't want to deal with the headache of jumping headfirst into a fully developed character, give them something simple to deal with. For somebody who's new to the group, they can probably sort it out and build their own character themselves. Roleplay-wise, when you have a brand new role player, it is very important to understand that even though they may be writers, even though they may have done plays before, the idea of doing it for sheerly entertainment purposes, role play from person to person, it may be a little awkward for them. So what you don't do is force the spotlight on them and declare that the show is theirs. What you can do, however, and I recommend this, is rather than letting them speak up and letting them make their own way in the group, because that can lead to them feeling left out and ignored as they get pushed to the back. And that can often happen with new players. What I would recommend is having a random NPC walk up to them and try and talk to them. Understand that you're probably going to get several failures out of it. Well, they get the kick out of it, you get the hang out of it, work out the kinks of what it means to roleplay. But that's a really good way to get a player involved. Random NPC, probably someone doing a very mundane thing, like the bar wench or the city guard asking if they've seen someone, and basically presenting a lot of real life situations that they could understand and answer. Now, for the person who's new to the system and the person who's new to the group, getting them used to roleplay is a very different animal, because you're trying to introduce to them how the group roleplays. What is the group's groove? And that can vary from group to group widely. You may have a group who has a mostly comedic bend to their games. You may have a group who is, no-nonsense types. You may have a group who deliberately creates roleplay conflict within the party because they feel it's an interesting, dramatic dynamic for the game experience. It all depends on who you are and how you do things, and it's something that they need to process and need to, work into their system so that they can be a part of the gaming experience. But it's very important to let them do it at their pace. If they're not flawless about it, if they're stumbling with it, if they're having a hard time grasping it, take them aside or ask them if there's everything all right, is there anything they can do, anything you can do to make it easier for them. At their pace, on their terms, is the best policy when introducing a new player. Even if they've played the system for years, even if they have played other games and have just been a gamer for years, or if they're brand new. Always do it in a manner that is easiest and least discomforting or inconvenient for them, because that lets them know that they've been accepted by somebody who's taking them into account fully. Both, not just you as a DM, but the players have to be willing to accommodate this. It has to be a group effort, otherwise the person's just going to feel like a fifth wheel. Anyhow, I hope you all thought this was very comprehensive, and maybe it'll help you with getting new players in the future. If you like anything you see here, please subscribe, and there'll be more to come. Please leave any comments of what you would like to see in future videos. Have a good one.